The galaxy had known only one ruler for thousands of years, the Droger Empire. They were not just conquerors. They were predators. They fed on fear, and they crushed anyone who resisted. Planet after planet fell under their shadow, their skies. Blackened by Droger warships, every species submitted. None dared to fight. None, until they met the humans. Earth was marked as a Class B civilization. Not primitive, but not dangerous either. Or so the Droger believed. Scouts were sent. They observed cities, watched weapons, scanned the oceans and skies. Reports came back with the same message. They are clever, but manageable. So the invasion order was signed without hesitation. The first Droger fleet entered Earth's orbit on a cold morning. Without warning, they destroyed Earth's satellite network, plunging the world into confusion. The predators believed this would be enough. They underestimated what they had awoken. General Marek, leader of Earth's combined defense forces, watched the skies burn from the Pentagon bunker. His voice was calm, but his hands were steady with purpose. They struck without a message. That means they fear us already. Mobilize all global units. Don't wait for permission. We fight back now. On the other side of the globe, a mining colony on Mars received the emergency broadcast. The workers were mostly civilian scientists, engineers, and maintenance crews. But among them was Captain Juno, a retired special ops soldier. She didn't wait for orders. She grabbed her gear, gathered volunteers, and prepared for sabotage runs on enemy ships. The Droger began their attack on major cities: New York, Tokyo, Berlin, Nairobi, Sao Paulo. Lasers cut through buildings, and humans screamed. But what the predators didn't expect was that no one ran. Firefighters held their ground. Police formed perimeters. Civilians formed rescue chains through fire and rubble. The Droger commander was confused. Why are they not fleeing? Where is the terror? He growled. In the shadows of destroyed cities, resistance groups rose like wildfire. They had no central command, no unified strategy, just one goal: survive and strike back. Drones were hacked, Droger patrols were ambushed, and stolen tech was reverse-engineered overnight. Humanity adapted fast. Faster than any species the Droger had ever faced. Back in orbit, the second Droger fleet arrived. Bigger, heavier. The predators thought brute force would be enough. But Earth had already activated its secret weapon, Project Ember, hidden for decades beneath Antarctica. It was not a super weapon, but a signal. A signal calling on humanity's outer colonies, the ones the Droger didn't know existed yet. From Titan's icy rings and Europa's frozen caverns, ships began to move. Not military ships, but terraforming vessels, science cruisers, and deep space haulers. They weren't built for war, but humans modified them fast. Welding torches became laser cutters. Engines were strapped with railguns. Every human outside Earth turned toward home. They were not running. They were coming to fight. In the Droger war room, panic began to form. Reports came in. Earth colonies are not small. They're building fleets. The High Predator snarled. They're just prey. They don't build war. But he was wrong. Humanity had never asked for war. But when war came, they did not hide. They studied. They adapted. And most of all, they remembered every blow. An AI from Earth's Defense Command unlocked an ancient file, an old military doctrine from the 21st century called Wolf Tactics. It was written when Earth was still divided, but it spoke of how to fight monsters. Hit fast. Disappear. Break them from the inside. For the first time in centuries, the predators found themselves hunted. Juno and her team boarded a damaged Droger ship in low orbit. Inside, they found something chilling. A cryovault. Inside it, hundreds of frozen life forms. Some human, some not. Victims taken from past conquests, stored like trophies. She whispered, "They've done this before. But not anymore. Down on Earth, General Marek ordered the activation of Operation Broken Chain. It was risky. It meant cutting off all satellites, all communications, even Earth's own. But it would blind the Droger. They relied on tech, humanity on instinct. The sky went dark, and for a moment, Earth looked defeated. But it wasn't silence. It was the calm before the storm. By the end of the second day, 42 cities were in ruins. But 42 cities were also fighting. The Droger were not used to resistance lasting this long. Their protocols did not cover prey that bites back. They tried bombing deeper. They failed. They tried infecting water supplies. Humanity purified it faster than expected. Every trick the predators used, humans countered. And for the first time, the Droger had to retreat from a battlefield. In their great archive, the Droger historians had recorded all wars, all defeats and victories. But now a new line would be written. Earth, first contact. Status failed. Humans unyielding. Asterisk, for thousands of years, the galaxy lived in fear of one name, the Varnok. They were not just rulers. They were predators. They hunted the weak, destroyed the brave, and enslaved the clever. Every star system eventually bowed to them. Entire species were turned into servants or wiped out completely. Resistance was seen as foolishness. The Varnok believed fear was the strongest weapon in the universe. And for a long time, it was. No one dared challenge them. Their ships were massive, their weapons unmatched, and their cruelty known across 10 galaxies. The Varnok didn't just kill their enemies. They made examples of them. They erased history. They made their victims forget who they were. Then came the humans, small, unnoticed, hidden on a blue planet in a forgotten arm of the galaxy. Their world wasn't even mapped properly. When a Varnok scout passed Earth, it reported nothing special. No warships. No galactic influence. Just billions of noisy, emotional bipeds with strange ideas. But one note stood out in the report. They don't fear death like others do. The Varnok High Command ignored it. They had crushed greater civilizations. Humans would be no different. A small fleet was sent. No warning, no message. Just an order: invade, crush, enslave. The Varnok warships entered Earth's orbit silently, blocking out the sun and parts of the world. Earth's governments were not ready, but Earth's people were not like others. They didn't kneel. The first strikes hit major cities: London, Mumbai, Lagos, Los Angeles. Buildings collapsed. Fires spread. Screams filled the air. But then, something strange happened. The humans didn't run. They fought back with everything they had: drones, old tanks, handguns, even kitchen knives. The Varnok expected surrender in the first hour. Instead, their soldiers were ambushed in alleyways. Their drones were hacked mid-flight. A grandmother in Tokyo used a gardening tool to kill a Varnok commander. In Rio, a boy climbed onto a burning tower to throw a homemade bomb into a passing warship. The Varnok had never seen resistance like this. They were confused. Then they got angry. General Reek, the Varnok fleet commander, called it an insult. "They are soft flesh with weak bones," he roared. They should kneel, but the humans didn't kneel. They improvised, they learned, and they refused to break. Within 2 days, the Varnok lost control of 5 landing zones. Human engineers repurposed broken alien tech. Mechanics turned crashed. Ships into traps. Civilians used underground tunnels to smuggle supplies. Even children acted as messengers. The whole planet had turned into a battlefield, and every human became a soldier. In a hidden base deep under Antarctica, Earth's leaders gathered. Some wanted to surrender. But one man, Commander Elias Grant, stood up. "They made a mistake," he said. "They attacked without learning who we are. Now we show them what we're made of." Grant ordered Operation Gritfire. Every old satellite was reactivated. Every colony ship was recalled. Ancient defense projects once buried were now unlocked. Humans had always prepared for war, just never like this. For the first time in history, Earth united not under one flag, but under one purpose. Meanwhile, in the Varnock flagship, General Reek received a strange signal. A message from a small ship coming from Mars. It said only one thing: "We're coming for you," Reek laughed. Then the human ship exploded near their shield generator, disabling it. Seconds later, another wave of missiles hit the hull. Humans didn't just fight, they planned, they adapted. They made the predators bleed. In the ruins of Shanghai, a group of civilians captured a Varnock warrior. Instead of killing him, they recorded him screaming as he begged for help. The video went viral across human networks and was broadcast into space. It was humanity's reply to fear. The Varnock began to realize this wasn't a war of ships or lasers. It was a war of will, and they were losing. Their soldiers began to hesitate. Their machines didn't adapt fast enough. And worst of all, the humans kept smiling, even when injured, even when dying. They smiled because they knew something the Varnock didn't. The Varnock ruled through fear. But humans had learned something stronger. They had pain, yes, but they also had rage, unity, memory. And now they had a reason to fight harder than ever. They were not just defending Earth. They were making a point to the entire galaxy. The predators had ruled long enough. But the age of fear was ending. The Varnock were no longer sure of their strength. What started as a quick conquest had turned into a long, bloody mistake. Earth was supposed to fall in a matter of hours. Instead, it had become a graveyard for Varnock pride. For the first time, the predators were forced to call for reinforcements. A massive carrier named the Blood Tide arrived from deep space. It carried elite Varnock hunters creatures bred only for one purpose: extermination. Their bodies were wrapped in armor, and their minds trained only to follow orders. But Earth wasn't scared. Not anymore. Humanity had seen the worst, and they were still standing. In the underground base beneath Antarctica, Commander Grant stood before a global panel. His eyes were tired, but his voice was sharp. "They think bigger ships will crush our will. They're wrong. We don't fight like they do. We strike where it hurts most, and we never stop." He approved a bold mission, Operation Ashfall. A volunteer squad would sneak aboard the Blood Tide itself. Not to destroy it, but to upload a virus into their command system. The virus was developed by a teenage hacker from New Delhi and a former AI programmer from Russia. Their weapon was not a bomb. It was code written with fury and brilliance. The squad chosen for the mission included Captain Juno from the Mars colony, Sergeant Tomas from the Amazon Resistance, and a medic named Alina, who once survived a Varnock plasma shot through the chest. They knew they might not return, but they boarded the stolen Varnock shuttle with silent determination. While the team moved through space, Earth fought back harder than ever. In the city ruins, resistance cells were now connected through underground networks. Old subway systems became supply routes. Even animals were trained to carry explosives into enemy camps. The Varnock started to lose ground. Their commanders gave orders, but fewer soldiers followed them. In orbit, the infiltration team reached the Blood Tide. They drifted close, hiding inside the debris of a destroyed satellite. Juno whispered through her gums, "They don't see us. They only look for strength, not for ghosts in the dark." Tomas smiled grimly. "Let's haunt them then." The shuttle latched onto the ship's underbelly. They cut their way in. Inside it was worse then. They imagined metal halls filled with cold light, cages of alien prisoners, and machines harvesting energy from tortured creatures. The Varnock didn't just conquer, they fed on pain. Alina shivered but pressed forward. "We're ending this. One room at a time." Back on Earth, news of the mission spread across human channels. No official announcement was made. But people started to believe in something again. They cheered in bomb shelters. They lit fires in ruined streets. The idea that the Varnak's greatest ship was being touched by human hands gave them hope. Inside the blood tide, the team reached the data core. Thomas hooked the device into the mainframe and began the upload. The virus was disguised as a Varnak battle hymn, but once played, it would rewrite command orders and scramble their targeting systems. Suddenly, alarms screamed through the corridors. The Varnak had detected them. Juno shouted, "We hold the door." She fired round after round at incoming hunters. Alina threw down shock traps. Thomas cursed as he tried to finish the upload. A plasma bolt hit his leg, but he didn't stop. Blood ran down his armor. 10 more seconds. He cried. On the surface of Earth, strange things began to happen. Varnak ships stopped firing. Their drones turned and crashed. Their command links failed. Confusion spread like wildfire among them. On the blood tide, the virus was complete. Thomas smiled through the pain. "Let's burn this place down." The team planted explosives near the core and ran, but hunters closed in. Alina was caught. She screamed for them to go. Juno hesitated, then turned back. She wouldn't leave anyone behind. They fought there. Way out, barely escaping through a maintenance shaft. The blast shook the ship. Half of it went dark. The Varnak commander aboard the blood tide snarled in rage. "They are vermin. They infect everything." But deep inside, he felt something new. It wasn't fear. It was doubt. These humans didn't behave like prey. They didn't hide. They infected ships. They broke rules. They turned death into resistance. Varnak Council, hidden on their moon world of Zyrax, held an emergency meeting. One elder asked, "What are they?" Another replied, "They are chaos given shape. They fight without command. They survive without order. And worst of all, they inspire others." Other species in the galaxy started to notice. Messages leaked. Images of human victories reached hidden colonies and enslaved races. The spark of rebellion lit far from Earth. The Varnak had ruled through fear. But now that fear had cracks. And in those cracks, humans planted fire. Earth didn't declare victory. It wasn't over. But now they had a chance. The hunters had become the hunted. And the galaxy had started to watch. Asterisk. The Varnak had always believed their rule was eternal. They thought they could crush hope by crushing bones. But now, the virus in the blood tide had done more than damage their systems. It had shaken the myth of their invincibility. For the first time in 1,000 years, whispers of rebellion spread beyond Earth. On a distant mining colony called Cora 7, enslaved miners of the Rellan species stopped working. One Rellan child had seen a smuggled video human standing on top of a burning Varnak walker, waving a torn Earth flag. That image was passed from claw to claw, wing to wing. The message was clear. The predators could bleed. Back on Earth, Commander. Grant ordered new strikes. Not on cities, but on Varnak strongholds across the solar system. The moon had become a Varnak supply point. Now it became a battleground. Human lunar miners, once peaceful and unarmed, turned excavation drills into weapons. The craters filled with fire and resistance. Captain Juno and her surviving team returned to Earth as heroes, but they didn't rest. She trained new units in sabotage. Thomas, despite his injury, helped build mobile hacking units. Alina, quiet but focused, worked day and night on medical aid for resistance fighters. These were not generals. They were humans who refused to quit. In orbit, the blood tide limped through space. Half-blind, systems broken, communications scrambled. But worse than the physical damage was the psychological one. The crew questioned commands. They whispered about humans in the halls. Some feared they had awakened something worse than war. Something they could not control. The Varnak Council made a decision. If Earth could not be crushed with force, it must be isolated. Blockades were ordered. Any ship that came near the planet was to be destroyed. The galaxy was warned, stay away from the infected world, but it was too late. The signal of resistance had already spread. On the edge of Varnock space, a rebel ship painted in stolen colors blasted through a checkpoint. On board were members of the Trascan species, long thought extinct. They weren't just fleeing. They were heading toward Earth, drawn by the idea of fighting back. The human fire had lit something ancient inside them. In the underground bunkers of Brazil, children were taught how to dismantle plasma rifles. In the mountains of Afghanistan, old war veterans used satellite maps to plan ambushes. In the snowy forests of Canada, a group of hunters brought down a Varnock beast using only traps and patience. Earth had become unpredictable. Every shadow held danger. Every sound was a warning. One Varnock scout, caught in a jungle trap, screamed as humans approached. Instead of killing him, they showed him a wall. On it were pictures of cities destroyed, families lost, and children buried. The scout stared silently. Then they handed him a radio and said, "Tell your leaders what you saw. And tell them we are not finished." The scout was released. His ship limped back to the nearest Varnock station. When he gave his report, his commander laughed. "They let you live? Why?" The scout, trembling, replied, "Because they don't fight like prey. They fight like something older. Something we forgot to fear." Deep in the Arctic ice, Earth's secret weapon stirred. Project Sledgehammer. Not a missile. Not a ship. But a massive electromagnetic pulse cannon built decades ago and hidden away. It could shut down every Varnock system in near orbit. But firing it would also risk Earth's own satellites. Commander Grant gave the order anyway. "We fight blind if we must. But they will go down first." The cannon was fired. The sky flashed white. In seconds, multiple Varnock ships went dark. They fell like dead birds into the ocean. Humanity cheered, but they knew it was just one step. The war was far from over. They had hurt the predators, but not broken them. The Varnock Council panicked. Reports came from more colonies' mutinies, lost ships, allied species refusing to send resources. Fear returned to the predators. Not the fear of weapons, but of an idea. An idea that humans had planted into the universe. You don't have to kneel. You can fight. Across the stars, hidden species began testing their own strength. Small groups refused Varnock commands. Prisoners escaped. A quiet rebellion had begun, one planet at a time. Not with fleets, not with armies, but with sparks. Sparks started by humans who refused to die quietly. The Blood Tide, now a ghost ship, drifted through space. A single message was found carved into its walls, scratched by human fingers before escape. It said, "You ruled with fear. Now fear has a new master." The galaxy was changing, and the Varnock could feel it. Their enemies were no longer hiding. Their allies were going silent. Their supply lines were being cut. But what terrified them most wasn't the damage. It was the message spreading across the stars. Humanity does not fear them anymore. In the outer reaches of Varnock territory, a small planet named Drexisfor declared its independence. The local Varnock governor laughed until his command center exploded. It was not a military strike. It was a message from Earth sent through a civilian satellite hacked by schoolchildren. The explosion only took one life. But the message was louder than any fleet. Commander Grant watched the report from his office, eyes heavy but proud. He knew the war was far from over. Earth still burned. Millions were lost. But humanity was no longer fighting alone. Species across the galaxy were joining the fire. And now it was time to strike the Varnock where it hurt most. Their command network, Operation Iron Pulse, was launched. It would target the Varnock communications relay on planet Zarnes Prime. This station controlled 40% of the Varnock military. Traffic, Destroying it would paralyze their entire Western fleet, but it was buried under layers of defense. Grant called upon Earth's best, not just soldiers, but thinkers, hackers, smugglers, even artists. This war needed more than firepower. It needed imagination. Captain Juno was chosen to lead the strike team. Her ship, the Vanguard, was fitted with stealth tech developed from broken Varnock cloaking modules. With her were 2 human engineers, a Xylan scout who defected after witnessing Earth's resistance, and a rogue AI named Reaper, once part of a failed military project. The Vanguard disappeared into deep space, flying through radiation storms and debris fields. Every hour brought new dangers, but Juno remained steady. "We reach Zarnes no matter what," she told her crew. "Because if we don't, millions more will burn." Meanwhile on Earth, the resistance had evolved. Entire cities operated underground. Libraries were rebuilt using scrap screens and solar batteries. Schools taught history of human rebellions. From Spartacus to the French Resistance, from ancient Earth wars to present-day survival. Children grew up not in fear but in fire. They learned why they fought, and who they were fighting for. On Zarnes Prime, the Varnock grew careless. Their commanders believed no one would dare come near such a secure facility. Their arrogance became their weakness. The Vanguard slipped through the outer defenses like a shadow. The team landed silently, using decoys and jammers. Juno and her squad crept through vents and tunnels, following stolen maps drawn by a prisoner who once escaped the station. Inside, they found horror. Prison cells filled with species long thought extinct. Minds broken. Bodies hollow. The Varnock didn't just control planets, they erased souls. The team freed who they could, and armed them. "You're not victims," Juno said. "You're soldiers now." The AI Reaper was plugged into the central hub. Its black code began eating through the relay's defenses. But the system was complex, alive in its own way. It fought back. Sparks flew. The AI screamed through the speakers. "I was made for war. Now I understand why." Outside, alarms sounded. Varnock guards stormed the tunnels. The humans and freed. Prisoners held the line. Blasters fired in tight spaces. Smoke filled the halls. Juno fought with a broken arm, her teeth gritted, refusing to fall. "Buy Reaper time," she yelled. At last the relay's core collapsed. Reaper sent a final pulse, a burst signal that tore through the Varnock network like lightning. Entire fleets lost command. Orders disappeared. Ships floated, leaderless. On hundreds of planets, Varnock troops stood frozen, confused, helpless. The Vanguard barely escaped. Parts of it were burning. Half the crew was injured. But they had won. And the ripple effect spread fast. On Galax 9, a Varnock warlord was overthrown by his own slaves. On the moons of Yevra, factories stopped production. And across the stars, the words echoed, "The humans are coming." On Earth, Commander Grant received the confirmation. He stood silent for a moment. Then he smiled. "We've broken their voice. Now we aim for their throat." The Varnock Council was in chaos. Their network failure was more than technical. It was cultural. Their fear-based system required total control. Now that control was shattered. Some council members fled. Others argued. One screamed, "They're just humans." But another whispered, "No, they are something else now. They are the storm we never planned for." Humanity had done the impossible. They had turned scattered survivors into an army. They had turned pain into power. And now they had turned fear against the very predators who once ruled the stars. Asterisk. Galaxy had shifted. Silence fell across entire star systems. The predators were no longer hunting, they were hiding. The Varnock Empire, once feared by all, was breaking apart. Not by fleets. Not by super weapons. But by the will of a species they once called weak. Earth had no time to celebrate. The damage was deep, cities still burned, food supplies were low, hospitals overflowed. But the fire inside humanity only burned brighter. They had bled too much to stop now. Commander Grant ordered the next phase. The Empire's mask has cracked. Now we pull it off completely. Operation Final Ember was launched. This was not a strike or a raid. This was war aimed straight at the Varnock homeworld Zetharan, a place no species had ever seen and lived. Hidden beyond 3 black holes, protected by dead zones and firewalls of energy, it was thought untouchable. But Juno and her team had brought back maps, stolen files, and courage sharper than steel. A fleet was assembled from every scrap Earth could gather, old cargo ships, mining rigs turned into war barges, atmospheric crafts modified for space battle. Alien defectors joined Traskans, Xylans, and Rullans. They didn't come for alliance. They came for revenge. The humans had started something no one wanted to end. Before launch, Commander Grant stood before the fleet. His voice echoed across the systems. They ruled with fear. We rise with fire. This isn't just for Earth. This is for every species. They chained. Today we don't just fight. Today we break history. The fleet entered deep space. The journey was brutal. Radiation storms damaged the shields. Gravity wells almost tore smaller ships apart. But no one turned back. They had already left fear behind. As they crossed the final dead zone, the sky opened, revealing Zetharan, the Varnock jewel world. Its towers were dark and sharp. Its skies were patrolled by warships as large as cities. The Varnock were waiting. They had called back every fleet, every hunter, every machine. 1,000,000 ships stood between Earth's ragtag force and the planet. But numbers didn't matter anymore. The first human shot wasn't fired by a soldier. It was launched from a refugee ship, once filled with Varnock prisoners. They had painted the side with blood. We remember everything. The battle began. It wasn't clean. It wasn't organized. It was chaos wrapped in fire. The Varnock formations broke as human pilots swerved, crashed, and struck where it hurt most. A single Earth cargo hauler flew straight into a command cruiser, detonating its engine from within. Across the battlefield, alien defectors screamed war cries never heard in centuries. Juno's team led the spear assault. Their ship, Vanguard 2, punched through the orbital line and aimed for the planetary shield generator. They had one job: bring it down so Earth's troops could land. They took hits from every side. Engines burned. Systems failed. But they pushed forward. On Zetharan's surface, Varnock civilians watched in horror. They had always believed in their empire's strength, but now the sky rained with fire. Children cried. Elders prayed. And for the first time, the predators felt what prey felt: helplessness. Juno's ship slammed into the generator compound. The team jumped out, wounded but alive. They planted charges. They fought off elite guards. Alina, once a medic, now wielded 2 pistols and protected the crew like a shield. Reaper, the rogue AI, uploaded itself into the Varnock defense grid. You tried to silence the galaxy, it whispered. Now hear it scream. The charges exploded. The planetary shields fell. Earth's fleet poured through the atmosphere like falling stars. Drop pods landed in waves. Soldiers stormed the towers. Drones scanned every corner. Commander Grant's voice came through the comms. No retreat. No mercy. This ends now. In the Varnock Council chamber, the High Lords screamed orders. But no one listened. Their own guards walked away. Some surrendered. Others joined the uprising. A young Varnock officer removed his rank badge and threw it at his general. They fight with soul. We fight with chains. You made us weak, human. Boots stepped onto the palace floor. Juno, bleeding and bruised, walked through shattered glass. It's over, she said. Not just for you, but for the fear you built your world on. A Varnok elder tried to crawl away. He asked, "What will you do with us?" Juno looked him in the eyes and replied, "We'll do what you never did. We'll give you a choice." The Varnok Empire had fallen, not with a single blast. Not with surrender, but with silence. For the first time in history, Zithran's skies were quiet. The streets of the Predator capital were filled not with conquerors, but with the voices of the freed. Earth's fleet hovered above the planet. Damaged, scattered, but victorious. Fires still burned in the distance. Bodies of the fallen, both human and alien, lay across the broken towers. But the war was over. Humanity had done what no species ever dreamed. They didn't just survive. They ended a reign that lasted 10,000 years. Commander Grant stepped onto Zithran's soil, followed by soldiers, medics, engineers, and diplomats. He didn't raise a flag. He didn't make a speech. He simply knelt and touched the ground. Then he stood, turned to his people and said, "We rebuild now. Not just cities, but what it means to be free." Across the galaxy, messages spread. Like wildfire, Varnok defeated. Earth stands unbroken. Resistance works. Prison worlds unlock their gates. Forgotten species emerged from shadows. Former slaves became leaders. And in many corners of space, new flags were raised, flags of choice, not chains. In Zithran's Great Hall, the surviving members of the Varnok Council were brought forward. They expected execution. But Juno looked at them with calm eyes. "We are not like you," she said. "You will face trial. And the galaxy will hear every word of your crimes." Some Varnok wept. Some shouted in denial. Others, broken by shame, bowed their heads. The age of fear was truly over. But peace would not come easily. The galaxy was scarred. Wounds ran deep. Many still wanted revenge. Others demanded justice. Commander Grant formed a coalition, not to rule, but to heal. The Galactic Rebuilding Alliance was born. Earth did not claim power. Instead, it offered knowledge, technology, and protection to any species ready to live without fear. Former enemies became allies. Former prey became builders. A new chapter began, not of dominance, but of unity. Juno returned to Earth quietly. No parades. No medals. She visited the graves of her fallen team. Tomas, who had sacrificed his life disabling a Varnok reactor. Elena, who took her final breath protecting injured civilians during the last assault. And Reaper the II, who chose to burn itself out to overload the defense grid. She whispered their names under her breath. Then she stood tall. Humanity had changed, but they never lost who they were. They didn't become the next empire. They didn't raise thrones. They built bridges. In ruins, they planted trees. In silence, they left space for others to grow. They understood now that true strength wasn't in weapons, but in memory, in unity, and in fire that refused to die. Years passed. Children across the stars learned of Earth not as destroyers, but as the spark of freedom. Museums were built on Zethran, showing how the Varnok fell not to greater firepower, but to greater will. A human quote was carved at the center. "We were never prey. We were patient predators of injustice." Some warned that another threat would rise one day. That peace never lasted. But humans didn't fear the future. They had already faced the worst and won. They didn't wait for danger to come. They prepared together. They trained not to conquer, but to defend all life that wished to stand freely. In the far reaches of space, a young alien boy asked his elder, "Why did the humans fight so hard?" The elder smiled gently and replied, "Because someone told them they couldn't." And that was their first mistake. And so the galaxy remembered, not just the fall of predators, but the rise of something stronger, the rise of humanity.